Plenty of all things, the law of prosperity. This is the spirit of infinite plenty, the power that has brought, that is continually bringing all things into expression in material form. We who live in the realization of his oneness with this infinite power becomes a magnet to attract to himself a continual supply of whatever things he desires. If one holds himself in the thought of poverty, he will be poor, and the chances are that he will remain in poverty. If he hold himself, whatever present conditions may be, continually in the thought of prosperity, he sets into operation forces that will sooner or later bring him into prosperous conditions. The law of attraction works unceasingly throughout the universe, and the one great and never-changing fact in connection with it is, as we have found, that likes attract like. If we are one with this infinite power, this source of all things, then in the degree that we live in the realization of this oneness, in that degree do we actualize in ourselves a power that will bring to us an abundance of all things that is desirable for us to have. In this way, we come into possession of a power whereby we can actualize at all times those conditions that we desire. As all truth exists now, and awaits simply our perception of it, so all things necessary for present needs exist now, and await simply the power in us to appropriate them. God holds all things in his hands. His constant word is, "My child acknowledges me in all your ways, and in the degree that you do this, and the degree that you live this, then what is mine is yours." Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. He giveth to all men liberally, and upbraideth not. He giveth literally to all men who put themselves in the right attitude to receive from him. He forces no good things upon anyone. The old and somewhat prevalent idea of godliness and poverty has absolutely no basis for its existence, and the sooner we get away from it, the better. It had its birth in the same way that the idea of asceticism came into existence, when the idea prevailed that there are necessarily a warfare between the flesh and the spirit. It had its origin, therefore, in the minds of those who had a distorted, a one-sided view of life. True godliness, in a sense the same as true wisdom. The one who is truly wise, and who uses the forces and powers with which he is endowed to him, the great universe always opens her treasure house. The supply is always equal to the demand, equal to the demand when he demand is rightly, wisely made. When one comes to a realization of these higher laws, then the fear of want ceases to tyrannize over him. Are you out of a situation? Let the fear that you will not get another take hold of and dominate you. And the chances are that it may be a long time before you will get another, or the one that you do get may be a very poor one indeed. Whatever the circumstances, you must realize that you have within you forces and powers that you can set into operation that will triumph over any and all apparent or temporary losses. Set these forces into operation, and you will then be placing a magnet that will draw to you a situation that may be far better than the one you have lost. And the time may soon come when you will be even thankful that you lost the old one. Recognize working in through you the same infinite power that creates and governs all things in the universe, the same infinite power that governs the endless system of worlds in space. Send out your thought. Thought is a force, and it has occult power of unknown proportions when rightly used and wisely directed. Send out your thought that the right situation or the right work will come to you at the right time, in the right way, and that you will recognize it when it comes. Hold to this thought, never allow it to weaken, hold to it, and continually water it with firm expectation. You in this way put your advertisements into a physical, a spiritual newspaper, a paper that has not a limited circulation, but one that will make its way not only to the utmost bounds of the earth, but of the very universe itself. It is an advertisement, moreover, which, if rightly placed on your part, will be far more effective than any advertisement you could possibly put into any printed sheet. No matter what claims are made in regard to its being the great advertising medium, and the degree that you come into this realization and live in harmony with the higher laws and forces, in that degree will you be able to do this effectively. If you wish to look through the want columns of a newspaper, then do it not in the ordinary way. Put the higher forces into operation and thus place it on a higher basis. As you take up the paper, take this attitude of mind. There is here an advertisement that it will be well for me to reply to. The moment I come to it, I will recognize it. Affirm this, believe it, expect it. If you do this in full faith, you will somehow feel the intuition the moment you come to the right one, and this intuition will be nothing more nor less than your own soul speaking to you. When it speaks, then act at once. If you get a situation and it does not prove to be exactly what you want, if you feel that you are capable of filling a better one, then the moment you enter upon it, take the attitude of mind that this situation and the stepping stone that will lead you to one that will be still better. Hold this thought steadily, affirm it, believe it, expect it, and all the time be faithful, absolutely faithful to the situation in which you are at present placed. If you are not faithful to it, then the chances are that it will not be the stepping stone to something better, but to something poorer. If you are faithful to it, the time may soon come when you will be glad and thankful, when you will rejoice that you lost your old position. This is the law of prosperity. When apparent adversity comes, be not cast down by it, but make the best of it, and always look forward for better things, for conditions more prosperous. To hold yourself in the attitude of mind is to set into operation subtle, silent, and irresistible forces that sooner or later will actualize in material form, that which is today merely an idea. But ideas have occult power, and ideas, when rightly planted and rightly tended, and the seeds that actualize material conditions. Never give a moment to complaint, but utilize the time that would otherwise be spent in this way in looking forward and actualizing the conditions you desire. Suggest prosperity to yourself. See yourself in a prosperous condition. Affirm that you will before long be in a prosperous condition. Affirm it calmly and quietly, but strongly and confidently. Believe it absolutely. Expect it. Keep it continually watered with expectation. You thus make yourself a magnet to attract the things that you desire. Don't be afraid to suggest, to affirm these things, for by so doing you put forth an ideal, which will begin to clothe itself in material form. In this way, you are utilizing agents among the most subtle and powerful in the universe. If you are particularly desirous for anything that you feel it is good and right for you to have, something that will broaden your life or that will increase your usefulness to others, simply hold the thought that at the right time, in the right way, and through the right instrumentality, there will come to you, or there will open up for you, the way whereby you can attain what you desire. I know of a young lady who a short time ago wanted some money very badly. She wanted it for a good purpose. She saw no reason why she shouldn't have it. She is one who has come into an understanding of the power of the interior forces. She took and held herself in the attitude of mind we have just pointed out. In the mornings, she entered into silence for a few moments. In this way, she brought herself into a more complete harmony with the higher powers. Before the day closed, a gentleman called, a member of a family with which she was acquainted. He asked her if she would do for the family some work that they wanted done. She was a little surprised that they should ask her to do this particular kind of work, but she said to herself, "Here is a call. I will respond and see what it will lead to." She undertook the work. She did it well. When she had completed it, there was put into her hands an amount of money far beyond what she had expected. She felt that it was an amount too large for the work she had done. She protested. They replied, "No. You have done us a service that transcends in value the amount we offer to pay you." The sum thus received was more sufficient for the work she wished to accomplish. This is but one of many instances in connection with the wise and effective use of the higher powers. It also carries a lesson. Don't fold your hands and expect to see things drop into your lap, but set into operation the higher forces, and then take hold of the first thing that offers itself. Do what your hands find to do, and do it well. If this work is not thoroughly satisfactory to you, then affirm, believe, and expect that it is the agency that will lead you to something better. The basis for attracting the best of all the world can give to you is to first surround, own, and live in these things in mind, or what is falsely called imagination. All so-called imaginings are realities and forces of unseen element. Live in mind in a palace, and gradually palatial surroundings will gravitate to you. But so living is not pinning, or longing or complainingly wishing. It is where you are down in the world, calmly and persistently seeing yourself as up. It is when you are now compelled to eat from a tin plate, regarding that tin plate as only the certain step to one of silver. It is not envying and growling at other people who have silver plate. That growling is just so much capital stock taken from the bank account of mental force. A friend who knows the power of the interior forces, and whose life is guided in every detail by them, has given a suggestion in this form. When you are in the arms of a bear, even though he is hugging you, look him in the face and laugh, but all the time keep your eye on the bull. If you allow all your attention to be given to the work of the bear, the bull may get entirely out of your sight. In other words, if you yield to adversity, the chances are that it will master you. But if you recognize in yourself the power of mastery over conditions, then adversity will yield to you, and will be changed into prosperity. If when it comes, you calmly and quietly recognize it, and use the time that might otherwise be spent in regrets and fears and forebodings and settling into operation the powerful forces within you, it will soon take its leave. Faith, absolute dogmatic faith, is the only law of true success. When we recognize the fact that a man carries his success or his failures with him, and that it does not depend upon outside conditions, we will come into the possession of powers that will quickly change outside conditions into agencies that make for success. When we come into this higher realization and bring our lives into complete harmony with the higher laws, we will then be able so to focus and direct the awakened interior forces that they will go out and return laden with that for which they are sent. We will then be great enough to attract success, and it will not always be apparently just a little ways ahead. We can then establish in ourselves a center so strong that instead of running hither and thither for this or that, we can stay at home and draw to us the conditions we desire. If we firmly establish and hold to this center, things will seem continually to come our way. The majority of people of the modern world are looking for things that are practical, that can be utilized in everyday life. The more carefully we examine the laws underlying the great truths we are considering, the more we will find that they are not only eminently practical, but in a sense, and in the deepest and truest sense, they are the only practical things there are. There are people who continually pride themselves upon being exceedingly practical, but many times those who of themselves think nothing about this are the most practical people the world knows. And on the other hand, those who take great pride in speaking of their own practicality are many times the least practical. Or again, in some way, they may be practical, but so far as life it is totality is concerned, they're absurdly impractical. What profit, for example, can there be for the man who, materially speaking, though he has gained the whole world, has never yet become acquainted with his own soul? There are multitudes of men all about us who are entirely missing the real life, men who have not learned even the ABC of true living. Slaves they are, abject slaves of their temporary material accumulations. Men who, thinking they possess their wealth, are on the contrary completely possessed by it. Men whose lives are comparatively barren in service to those about them and to the world at large. Men who, when they can no longer hold the body, the agency by means of which they are related to the material world, will go out poor indeed, pitiably poor, unable to take even the smallest particle of their accumulations with them. They will enter upon the other form of life naked and destitute. The kindly deeds and developed traits of character, the realized powers of the soul, the real riches of the inner life and unfoldment, all those things that become our real and eternal possessions, have been given no place in their lives. And so the real thing of life they are destitute, nay, many times worse than destitute. We may not suppose that habits once formed are any more easily broken off in this form of life than they are in this. If one voluntarily grows a certain mania here, we must not suppose that the mere droppings of the body makes all conditions perfect. All is law, all is cause and effect. As we sow, so shall we also reap, not only in this life, but in all lives. He who is enslaved with a sole desire for material possessions here will continue to be enslaved, even after he can no longer retain his body. Then, moreover, he will have not even the means of gratifying his desires. Dominated by this habit, he will be unable to set his affections, for a time at least upon other things, and the desire without the means of gratifying it will be doubly torturing to him. Perchance this torture may be increased by his seeing the accumulations he thought were his now being scattered and wasted by spendthrifts. He wills his property, as we say to others, but he can have no word as to its use. How foolish, then, for us to think that any material possessions are ours. How absurd, for example, for one to fence off a number of acres of God's earth and say they are his. Nothing is ours that we cannot retain. The things that come into our hands come not for the purpose of being possessed, as we say, much less for the purpose of being hoarded. They come into our hands to be used, to be widely used. We are stewards merely, and as stewards we shall be held accountable for the way we use whatever is entrusted to us. That great law of compensation that runs through all life is wonderfully exact in its workings, although we may not always fully comprehend it or even recognize it when it operates in connection with ourselves. The one who has come into the realization of a higher life no longer has a desire for the accumulation of enormous wealth any more than he has a desire for any other excess. In the degree that he comes into the recognition of the fact that he is wealthy within, external wealth becomes less important in his estimation. When he comes into the realization of the fact that there is a source within from which he can put forth a power to call to him and actualize in his hands at any time a sufficient supply for all his needs, he no longer burdens himself with vast material accumulations that require his constant care and attention, and thus take his time and his thought from the real things of life. In other words, he first finds the kingdom, and he realizes that when he has found this, all other things follow in full measure. It is as hard for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven, said the Master, he who having nothing had everything, as it is for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle. In other words, if a man give all his time to the accumulation, the hoarding of outward material possessions far beyond what he can possibly ever use, what time has he for the finding of that wonderful kingdom, which when found brings all else with it? Which is better, to have millions of dollars and to have a burden of taking care of it all, for the one always involves the other, or to come into the knowledge of such laws and forces that every need will be supplied in good time, to know that no good thing shall be withheld, to know that we have in it our power to make the supply always equal to the demand. The one who enters into the realm of this higher knowledge never cares to bring upon himself a species of insanity that has such a firm hold upon so many in the world today. He avoids it as he would avoid any loathsome disease of the body. When we come into the realization of our higher powers, we will then be able to give more attention to the real life instead of giving so much to the piling up of vast possessions that hamper rather than help it. It is the medium ground that brings the true solution here, the same as it is in all phases of life. Wealth beyond a certain amount cannot be used, and when it cannot be used, then becomes a hindrance rather than an aid, a curse rather than a blessing. All about us are persons with lives now stunted and dwarfed, who could make them rich and beautiful, filled with a perennial joy, if they would begin wisely to use that which they have spent the greater portion of their lives in accumulating. The man who accumulates during his entire life, and who leaves even all when he goes out for benevolent purposes, comes far short of the ideal life. It is but a poor excuse of a life. It is not especially commendable in me to give a pair of old worn-out shoes that I shall never use again to another who is in need of shoes. But it is commendable, if indeed doing anything we ought to do can be spoken of as being commendable, it is commendable for me to give a good pair of strong shoes to the man who, in the midst of severe winter, is practically shoeless, the man who is exerting every effort to earn an honest living and thereby take care of his family's needs. And if in giving the shoes I also give myself, he then has a double gift, and I a double blessing. There is no wiser use of those who have great accumulations can make of them than wisely to put them into life and to character day by day while they live. In this way their lives will be continually enriched and increased. The time will come when it will be regarded as a disgrace for a man to die and leave vast accumulations behind him. Many a person is living in a palace today who in real life is poorer than many a one who has not even a roof to cover him. A man may own and live in a palace, but the palace for him may be a pool house still. Moth and rust are nature's wise provisions, God's methods for disintegrating and scattering, in this way getting ready for use in new forms, that which is hoarded and consequently serving no use. There is also a great law continually operating whose effects are to dwarf and deaden the powers of true enjoyment, as well as all the higher faculties of one who hoards. Multitudes of people are continually keeping away from them higher and better things because they are forever clinging on to the old. If they would use any pass on the old, room would be made for new things to come. Hoarding always brings loss in one form or another. Using wisely, using brings an ever-renewing gain. If a tree should as ignorantly and greedily hold on to this year's leaves, when they have served their purpose, where would be the full and beautiful new life that will put forth in the spring? Gradual decay and finally death would be the result. If a tree is already dead, then it may perhaps be well enough for it to cling on to the old, for no new leaves will come out. But as long as the life in a tree is active, it is necessary that it rid itself of the old ones, that room may be made for the new. Opulence is the law of the universe. An abundant supply for every need is nothing is put in the way of its coming. The natural and the normal life for us is this, to have such a fullness of life and power by living so continually in the realization of our oneness with the infinite life and power, that we find ourselves in the constant possession of an abundant supply of all things needed. Then not by hoarding, but by wisely using and ridding ourselves of things as they come, an ever-renewing supply will be ours, a supply far better adapted to present needs than the old could possibly be. In this way we not only come into possession of the richest treasures of the infinite good ourselves, but we also become open channels for which they can flow to others.